What if you entered a competition called the Long Walk? 50 young people must walk without rest at a minimum speed of 3 miles per hour. The winner will be the one who stays standing the longest. The reward is an unimaginable fortune plus a special request. However, if you lose, the soldiers overseeing the event will graciously offer you a bullet in the face. What would you do in this situation? This is the story of The Long Walk, a film released in 2025. Today I'm gonna break it down and show you everything the characters should have done to win this thing. The film is based on a book by Stephen King. In an alternate 20th century, the United States becomes a totalitarian military regime after a devastating war. The regime establishes an annual event, the Long Walk, which aims to inspire patriotism and work ethic among the poor, while the country faces a severe economic crisis. The government randomly draws 50 teenagers, one from each state. They are given water and rations, and must walk hundreds of miles non-stop, escorted by armed soldiers who also broadcast the event. The winner is the one who walks the longest, and those who stop walking will kindly be executed by the soldiers without mercy. Dropping out, fleeing, or getting sick is not an option. The winner gets a fortune from the government and a special wish, according to the winner's request. One of these unlucky contestants is Ray, who signed up for the Long Walk against his mother's will. The desperate woman cries and tries to convince Ray to quit, even minutes before the event begins. The boy explains that the previous day was the last day to quit. He says goodbye to his mom and walks to the starting line. It's there that Ray meets Pete McVries, with whom he forms a strong friendship. The best way to beat this movie is to prevent it from happening in the first place, so just don't sign up for the Long Walk to avoid being randomly selected by the regime. Anyway, Pete and Ray start to bond with other unlucky teens, including Olsen, Art, Barkovich, Stebbins, and Curly, a kid who lied about his age to join the march. Great dictatorship that can't even verify the true age of a civilian. Then we see the Major arrive, the tough soldier in charge of overseeing the unfortunate walkers. Apparently, Luke Skywalker lived long enough to become Darth Vader. Anyway, he explains that their sacrifice isn't in vain, as each walk inspires the nation and increases production. The problem is, there are still too many lazy people who don't want to work. The Major says that only by overcoming this will the United States become the richest country again. He explains that anyone can win, but they can't step off the asphalt. If that happens, they'll be immediately eliminated, and I'm talking about a bullet rain on your back. Also, they must wear a wristwatch that measures their walking speed. Those who slow down to less than 3 miles per hour or stop walking will get a warning. From there, they have 10 seconds to pick up the pace. If they don't, the military will issue a second warning. After 3 warnings, if the walker isn't walking at least 3 miles per hour, they will be executed. Anyone who gets a warning must walk an hour without getting another one to clear their record. If they get 2 warnings, they must walk 2 hours without another warning, and so on. Before the walk begins, there are some precautions the participants should have taken to increase their chances of winning. First, take a look at those shoes they picked to walk in. Boots and all-stars are terrible options for a march of hundreds of miles. I say this because the soles don't provide enough cushioning, not even for walking to the corner to buy bread. This means their feet will soon be covered in blisters, eventually preventing them from continuing. In response, the unlucky folks could have bought or borrowed shoes suited for this kind of activity. Using tape on friction points, wearing double-thin socks, and applying protective nail polish to fragile nails can make the difference between winning and ending up dead. Another good idea is to avoid loose shoes that create friction. The most important tip is to be physically prepared for this challenge. If these guys were going to sign up for the Long Walk, the bare minimum they should have done was train to build up their stamina. You can't just try to be Usain Bolt overnight. Stamina training is progressive, walking long distances from a young age, strength training, interval training to simulate fatigue and recovery. Mental health is also crucial because of the strain on the body. Long training sessions, 6 to 10 hours with hydration and planned meals, help synchronize the body and mind. Another point these idiots should have focused on is stretching. It's not just about stretching your calves for 30 seconds and thinking you're ready. You need weekly mobility training, stretching ankles, hips, and hamstrings. They could have walked on uneven terrain like sand and gravel, making sure to use the same socks and shoes they planned to wear for the Long Walk. That way, the shoes would have been broken in and they'd be less likely to develop blisters. Anyway, the march begins and and Barkovich is the first to stop to tie his shoe. One more tip, don't wear shoes with laces because they'll untie, and you'll need to squat to tie them again, which might earn you some warnings from the military. That's exactly what happens as Barkovich gets 3 warnings. He tells the others that he was just resting because they've already walked about 11 miles.
What a dumbass!
This is a good tactic, but taking 3 warnings is risky because at any moment Barkovich could trip or get a cramp, which would send him straight to an early grave. If it were me, I'd just rest for 20 seconds, just enough time to take 2 warnings, not 3. If they did this every 2 hours, they could clear their record of warnings and still get some rest. We see Ray, McVries, Art, and Olsen become really good friends and even joke with each other. Then some idiot named Richard tries to get in with them and says he's writing a book about the long walk. He plans to publish it once he wins. However, the guys think this is the dumbest idea ever because if Richard wins, he'll have all the money in the world, so he won't need to sell books. In fact, he's sabotaging himself by carrying unnecessary weight, like a notebook and pen. In this case, it's crucial to walk as light as possible because excess weight makes your body put more mass on your feet, which eventually wears out muscles and joints faster. That means most of the participants don't like to use their brains because they're carrying backpacks and jackets, which makes no sense for 2 reasons. It's clearly spring or summer, so they won't get cold. Even if the temperature drops a bit at night, it won't matter since they can't stop to sleep, meaning their bodies will stay in constant motion, keeping them from getting cold. Then Curly makes it clear that being younger isn't necessarily a sign of physical fitness, as he's the first one to get cramps. Ray and McVries try to encourage the kid to walk, but his left leg decides to retire, and he falls. The only thing he could have done was hop on his right leg until the cramp passed. Maybe he could have stayed within the speed limit, but no, he prefers to cry on the ground and gets executed by a soldier. A few hours later, McVries gives his friends a golden shower, and of course, they all avoid the warm gift. A 14-year-old girl shows up at a store and says she loves Ray and is cheering for him. The participants comment that only locals can follow the walk closely, but only until the walkers pass them. When they reach the 12th mile, Olsen starts to cramp, and Ray suggests they slow down from 3.4 miles per hour to 3.1 miles, which is actually a good idea. Walking faster than the minimum consumes energy and can lead to cramps and fatigue earlier than necessary. Out of nowhere, one of the participants collapses due to an epileptic seizure. As Barkovich is a first-class jerk, he says the guy must have hidden his epilepsy, which got him selected for the walk. The guy is executed after the 3 warnings, and Barkovich celebrates because his chances of winning have increased. Barkovich realizes he can quickly reduce the competition and starts insulting Rank. He's such a jerk that he says Rank's mom was a prostitute, which irritates the rival to the point that he tries to punch Barkovich. The punch fails, and Rank falls, scraping his face on the asphalt. This leaves him paralyzed in pain until the soldier finishes him off after the 3 warnings. Art and McVries call Barkovich a murderer, which makes him upset and isolates him from the other participants. I honestly think Barkovich showed he knows how to play, because provoking the other participants and saying they won't last long is a great way to defeat the movie. As they walk each mile, morale gets weaker due to heat and exhaustion, so bad moods will hit hard, making participants more susceptible to provocation. Given that, the participants could have convinced the weaker ones to quit, which would eliminate a big chunk of the competition. Anyway, Ray and the others see a participant having a serious stomach ache as he paints the asphalt with diarrhea. The guy can't control his incontinence, slows down, and gets a bullet to the head. 35 miles later, we see Ray asleep on his feet, involuntarily, as his body starts shutting down. He dreams of his mom, but is saved by McVries, who wakes him up. Things start to spiral out of control when the group encounters a hill, which their legs definitely won't want to climb. 14 participants fail to maintain the minimum speed and are immediately executed. Ray almost becomes a memory after receiving 3 warnings, but that doesn't happen because McVries tells him to pour his canteen over his head. The cold shower wakes Ray up and allows him to keep up with the rest of the walkers. The next day, we see that Richard has broken his ankle, so he won't be able to walk anymore. Look on the bright side, at least he won't need to finish writing his book. He's taken out after the 3 warnings, which really shakes the morale of the survivors. When the group passes through a village, one of the extra walkers tries to escape from the military, regretting joining the march, and is quickly shot at the entrance of a store.
Next!
Another guy who's in trouble is Stebbins, who starts developing a weird cough. Ray and McVries are slightly concerned, but the quiet guy says it's just spring pollen allergies. Since they have nothing to do except walk, Ray decides to reveal what his special wish will be if he wins the march. He wants things to change in the government and if possible to cancel the march. However, Olsen says the prize rules don't allow changes to government procedures. The only thing Ray can do right now is curse the major, which he does loudly. The rest of the participants decide to do the same, giving the tough soldier and the march a collective cursing. On the third day, the walkers reach 144 miles, and ART can't hold it anymore. He paints the asphalt in great style. The kid almost goes past the third warning, but manages to release pressure in time. That's when Ray thinks the walk is a great form of therapy and tunes in McVries' ear, revealing the real reason he entered the march. Ray's father loved the world before the war and simply ignored the laws of the American dictatorship in place, teaching his son about philosophy and music from the peaceful times. Unfortunately, the totalitarian government found out about this and sent the major to have a friendly chat with Ray's dad. The major gave him two choices: either swear allegiance to the new regime and stay alive, or take the express train to the other side. Ray's dad chose option number 2, which earned him a bullet from the major's gun. After that, Ray was consumed by rage and turned to the dark side. The boy's new plan is to win the competition and use the special wish to ask for a gun at the finish line and blow the major's brains out. However, McVries thinks this is a bad idea, as it's likely the government will shoot him for it. That's when McVries tells his story. He was born an orphan and got into crime at an early age. He was the tough guy, beating everyone up until he met someone bigger than him, which gave him this scar on his face. McVries was arrested by the government, and after he got out of jail, he decided to change his life, which led him to sign up for the march. Suddenly, Hank has a psychotic breakdown and tries to attack the soldiers, but they shoot the poor bastard and let him bleed to death. After discovering he was married, the survivors promise to send money to Olsen's wife. The only guy who's not asked to contribute is Barkovich, who's brooding over Rank's death. This leads him to ask to join the pack, which Ray agrees to. However, Barkovich is crazier than Batman after Robin's death, as he has a nervous breakdown and quits living with a blow through his throat. At mile 260, we see the group at death's door. They're approaching Ray's hometown, which leads to a quick hug with his mom. Ray gets 3 warnings, but doesn't become a memory because McVries pulls him away from his mom before he can have coffee with a sandwich. When they leave the town, Collins goes crazy too, steals a soldier's gun, shoots him, and asks Ray to help with the rebellion.
This is Sparta!
However, the other survivors just look at him and leave him to take a bullet. At this point, Collins could have shot the second soldier easily, as he was slow to react and still allowed the participant to ask for help. After that, Collins could have waited for the military vehicle from behind to approach and shot the other soldiers with the help of that 50 caliber machine gun. They wouldn't have won the march, but at least they could have sparked a nationwide rebellion since everything was being broadcast. Anyway, Collins ends up finishing himself off to avoid going down by the soldiers' hands. And within hours, Art is next, a victim of internal bleeding. The finalists are Stebbins, Ray, and McVries. The quiet kid finally opens up and reveals that he's the bastard son of the major. Stebbins joined the competition because of the special wish, which was to have tea with the major at his house. The problem is that Stebbins discovered the major had about 24 kids out of wedlock, which means Stebbins doesn't mean anything to him. The kid says he's not suffering from allergies, but from internal bleeding that's taking over his organs. With that, Stebbins decides to stop walking and gets executed by the soldiers. On the night of the 5th day, after walking 533 miles, Ray and McVries reach a town where a large crowd gathers to see who will win. Pete is at his limit and sits down, but Ray lifts him and asks him to keep going. McVries agrees and says Ray is the most persuasive guy in the world, but as he walks, he doesn't realize that Ray has stopped. It's then that the major executes Ray personally and congratulates Pete for winning. When asked what his wish is, Pete carries out Ray's plan, asking for a rifle and sending the major to the grave. McVries doesn't even think and simply turns to the street, continuing his walk. The Long Walk received great reviews both from critics and the public. The film leans more towards drama than any other genre, which isn't a bad thing at all, since the relationships between the characters are very well developed by the script and you get attached to each of them. This is yet another Stephen King work that uses fictional elements to critique aspects of society, like the human race's relentless pursuit of material wealth and how a fictional catastrophe can turn a nation, once known as the bastion of the free world, into a dictatorship that uses questionable methods to regain past glory. It's a great movie, which, even though it doesn't explore the post-war world much, still manages to keep things dynamic in a situation that could easily have been a total bore. For that reason, I give The Long Walk an 8 out of 10. In terms of box office, the film made a decent profit as it only cost $20 million to make and went on to gross $62 million. Without further ado, let's get to the kill count. The total number of kills in the film was 52, as the body bag award goes to Curly. I hope you liked the video, I see you on the next one, and bye!